In Lesson 1, we established the spatial logic of the face. We built the beauty map, defining exactly where color and contrast belong in Dana's system. Now we move from the map to the instruments required to actually navigate it. We are not applying a step-by-step full face of makeup today. We are breaking down the mechanical grammar of cosmetic tools. We have to understand exactly what a brush or a sponge does before it ever touches the skin. The entire philosophy of this course rests on a single rule. Products create color, and formulations dictate texture. Tools create control. The formula sitting in the pan is static. The instrument you pick up determines how that formula behaves. The instrument dictates the placement boundaries. It controls the surface pressure against the skin. It decides whether the edge of a contour is sharp or completely softened, and it determines whether a foundation sits in a heavy layer or shears out into a breathable texture. Soft Poetic Muse Glam requires intentional placement and completely invisible blending. You cannot achieve a soft watercolor finish by accident. You achieve it by selecting the exact mechanical tool designed to deliver that specific diffusion. Every brush performs according to basic physical properties. The density of the bristles, the amount of airflow between them, and the shape dictate product transfer. Look at these 3 brush archetypes. A dense brush has its bristles packed tightly together. This configuration picks up maximum product and deposits it with 0 air gap. If you take a highly pigmented formula, like a rich cream blush, and apply it with a dense tool, the physical result is a heavy, stamped patch of color on the skin. A fluffy brush introduces space and movement. The air physically prevents the product from packing down. Instead, it scatters the thin over a wider area, creating a diffused edge perfect for transition. A tapered brush acts as a mechanical hybrid. It provides targeted placement at the tip, while the angled, graduating edges simultaneously diffuse the product outward into a smooth gradient. The scale of the tool dictates precision. When working on microgeographies like the inner corner of the eye, you must use a micro tool to prevent spillage. Large tools offer speed. They cover wide surface areas quickly, but they sacrifice the boundaries of controlled placement. A massive powder brush sweeps quickly, but it will inevitably drop powder into areas that need to retain a natural glow. Selecting a tool based on its physical properties prevents muddy application. When you match the mechanics to the job, controlled diffusion is guaranteed. Tool hygiene is an intrinsic component of the final aesthetic outcome. It is a strict mechanical requirement for flawless application. A dirty tool physically fails to perform. Old product buildup, natural oils, and skin debris bind the bristles together. This alters the friction of the brush against the skin and completely changes its absorption rate, destroying the mechanical properties we just established. The visual consequences are immediate. A clogged foundation brush leaves streaks. Old pigment turns warm cheeks muddy. Dark buildup dulls a luminous lid. This aesthetic requires watercolor thin layers and sheer, imperceptible edges. Clean tools provide the precise mechanical friction needed to achieve that. They are a structural requirement. We can now apply these mechanical rules to the geography of the face. We do this by mapping specific tools to distinct structural zones. This chart maps out the zones for complexion work. For the base, the goal is satin realism. This requires targeted evening strictly at the center of the face, never blanketing the surface. The dense foundation brush is assigned exclusively to this center zone to address redness and shadows. The coverage originates here, spreading outward and fading entirely before it reaches the perimeter. Next, a damp beauty sponge is deployed across the boundary lines. The moisture shears out the edges of the foundation, thinning the product layer and correcting any excess texture left by the brush. Powder application is heavily restricted. A small fluffy brush applies powder strictly to high shine points, under the eyes, nose, and chin, leaving the satin finish intact. Moving to the cheek, the structural goals are twofold. We need to add peripheral warmth, and we need to create vertical lift. The bronzer brush is mapped strictly to the upper perimeter. It sweeps across the hairline and temples to create a soft frame, stopping well before the lower cheeks. Dragging bronzer on a low diagonal toward the mouth forces the visual weight downward. It creates a hollow, sinking effect that counters a lifted structure. To create lift, a tapered blush brush initiates contact high on the cheekbone, aligned with the outer iris. The pigment is then pulled backward and upward toward the temple. Stamping blush directly onto the apples with a dense brush deposits a concentrated circle of color. It halts the eye, preventing the needed upward sweep. Contouring tools, if used at all, are restricted to minimal, highly localized placement near the ear. They provide a whisper of shadow at the very edge. Isolating these tools to their strict geographical zones ensures the natural architecture of the face is supported. When boundaries blur, structure collapses. We now move to the microzones of the face. The eyes, brows, and lips operate on a much smaller scale, requiring extreme mechanical precision. This anatomical chart maps the boundaries of the eye zone. The objective is to protect the eye's natural brightness while introducing a soft, elongated lift. Large fluff brushes are assigned to the upper crease, spreading transition shades over a wide area. Small blending brushes concentrate darker depth exclusively at the outer third, exactly where the eye requires lift. An angled brush with powder shadow provides a distinct mechanical advantage over liquid liner. It creates a defined, softened outer flick that elongates the lash line without the harsh boundary of wet ink. For brows, a spoolie is essential. It physically redistributes pigment through the hairs, transforming a dense, rigid pencil stroke into a polished, airy frame. Lash curlers and outer corner lashes alter the eye's geometry. They pull natural lashes upward and outward, opening the gaze without burying the lid in shadow. A lip brush is mapped to the perimeter of the mouth. It softens hard lip liner inward, maintaining a plush, defined border that never looks rigid. The smallest tools are responsible for the highest level of refinement. Controlling these micro details separates an amateur application from a true masterclass result. Mechanical tool mastery is only effective when paired with strict product literacy. Every formula you pick up must have a single, clearly defined job. Disorganized makeup is rarely the result of bad products. It is usually the result of a formula deployed to perform the wrong mechanical job. This matrix maps out strict structural functions. For the complexion, foundation provides evening, powder provides stability, bronzer provides warmth. In the cheek column, we explicitly separate functions. Blush exists to create lift. Contour exists to create shadow. You cannot swap them without muddying the result. Detail items follow the same logic. Eyeliner modifies shape. Mascara creates separation. Enforcing these single-word job descriptions prevents overlapping formulas. When every product stays in its lane, the face remains clean, organized, and free of visual clutter. There is a common assumption that a polished, masterclass aesthetic requires a massive collection of specialized tools. It does not. This pyramid breaks down the tool hierarchy. The essential kit at the base is completely limited to fundamental base builders and soft diffusion brushes. This small rotation is all that is required to build the core architecture of the face. Heavy contouring sets, baking puffs, and dramatic full-strip lashes sit in the optional and advanced tiers. They are specific tools for specific contexts, not daily requirements for an elevated look. Before you add a new tool to your kit, run it through the mirror check diagnostic. Does this tool place product precisely? Does it diffuse edges softly? Does it build thin layers? And actively support my soft structure? Mastery is a result of understanding placement and physical friction. It is never achieved by simply accumulating more accessories. The instruments determine the outcome. Dense tools build coverage and concentrate pigment. Fluffy tools diffuse edges and scatter light. Dana's ecosystem prioritizes soft lift, watercolor edges, and satin realism. Strict control over how product meets the skin ensures we avoid harsh carved geometry. Now that the mechanical grammar is established, we have to look at the formulas themselves. In Lesson 3, we tackle product judgment, evaluating undertones, finishes, and specific cosmetics to determine exactly what deserves a place on the face.